Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be installing my water cooler, Corsair H150i. Let's get started. I'm pretty excited. I want to move pretty quickly here. We will be saying goodbye to our Hyper 212 Evo, which has been an absolute monster. I love you. We'll see you in another world. I believe my M.2 slot is right in this area. I'm not really sure whether I should do it first or after I install the cooler. I think I'm going to put the cooler on first. Looks like our M.2 did not come with any kind of hardware. I believe I have one, so let me go get that. It might be specific to the motherboard too. There is our little M.2 screw. Very, very small. It's worth noting that on the block now, thermal paste already applied. Chances are I'm still going to swap that out for Arctic MX4 just to see if I can get that little bit of difference. Stock pastes, I guess, are not always the best. Just to be sure, although that does look nice and pretty. I haven't gotten to it yet, but herein lies our problem. These drive bays at the top here, they're riveted on. And it's like that in several locations. The ones you can see are very easy, but there's a few that are like way tucked in there that, like, I don't know if they're going to be worth reaching. Really, several things can happen here. If I put the radiator up here, the tubes are either going to be needing to be here or here. The hoses will either be in front of this rear exhaust fan, or they will be kind of rubbing on this cage here. After a while, could be a problem. There is a little bit of vibration in a computer case. My first order of business is just going to be removing my old air cooler, and it's just 4 very easy screws here, and I'm probably going to lay the case down while I do it. So let's go. So I had to remove this fan bracket from the heatsink to remove it. So that's the thing. Boy, oh boy, is it dusty in here. Okay. Off we come. I guess I don't even really need to remove it from its little socket on the motherboard, so that's nice. But now we gotta get these risers out. So looking ahead here, obviously the back of my PC is a big mess, and finding room for this guy is definitely going to be a challenge, because this is a fan splitter as well as RGB hub. I just don't know how this is going to work. So I get to use my favorite tool, which is this small socket thing, to undo the brackets. And it's just quite literally a socket driven by a screwdriver. Sneak this bracket off. No longer necessary. Then we just have these risers, which we can unthread off. Looks like we have a nice and sweet little bag for Intel products. What the fuck is happening here? So on your bracket, before you start to panic that it doesn't fit, these actually slide around. Hey, that's good to know. Now we can convince it to fit in a much more intuitive way. That reminds me, the thing that made this such a pain in the ass the first time around, there's kind of like these pre-cut holes that are offset from each other. Finding the correct one was a pain in the butt. Oh, and this also had adhesive that I never used. We'll be sure to use that this time. Huh? Yeah. Hey, look at that. I don't think I'm missing any steps here, but you know, I've been wrong before. 115X. 115X means 115 whatever digit. So my 1151 is in this category. Our little risers, they don't need to be super tight. When we use the nut to thread down are cooler, it will put that kind of final torque on there. Step number next, we'll be removing the top fans here, and then we'll work on mounting the radiator. This fan used to be an RGB fan, but it was a purple one, and I actually I just cut the wires so it wasn't purple anymore. I figured since it was clear it would absorb some of the RGB, but both my fans up top are not RGB, so this is going to add a lot of color and saturation, so that'll be cool. These fans are smaller, so use 3 120s instead of 2 140s. But I think this was a cheap fan, and I'm hoping these two particular fans are some of the louder fans I have in the case. I think I've replaced damn near every case fan on this original build already. Fan number 2. I'm kind of sizing it up in here to get a good idea of how much space the block will take. That way I can know if I need to do the M.2 sooner or later. I'm going to be pasting and all that stuff, and I just don't want to drip it or... so I just realized we're not even going to be able to fit it in that way, will we? Or can we here? Okay. So note, I still have my plastic on it to protect those fins as much as I possibly can here. That seems like it would be okay. Kind of what we're looking at right now. The radiator is up here and the hoses are towards the front. My main concern here is that these hoses are going to be touching this bracket. That can eventually wear through. That is definitely the best way to do it. Again, I've thought about modifying the case. One thing that I think is pretty beneficial to do when you get little packs of hardware is just organize them into little piles. You'll get an idea of how much of each type of hardware you have, which can help you figure out what it's for. For example, only for these. Hey, you know, there's only 4 spots that my CPU bracket mounts to. You will have to make some of these executive decisions while you are building your PC, and you can get it right and get it wrong, and the PC will still work. Pretty much the first time I went to go upgrade something, I realized how sloppily I put it together and how much of a jumbled mess pretty much the back side of the PC was, but also my wiring up here. Fans, the wires are always on like a corner essentially, and so there's a big difference if I mounted it in here with the fans on this side than if I mounted it here and then the fans are back there. It just really pays off to think about these things before you rush and put everything together and just get it working. Almost always the logo is the intake side on Corsair fans. So what I'm going to be doing is I want my air to go up. Air will come into the case this way pretty much. This will be the highest point. Hopefully that convection will allow some help. I don't know. I mentioned that in a forum and someone told me that heat rising is not really a thing that happens in PCs because the force of the air from the fans blowing it will just overtake that heat rising. So this thing is going to be pretty unfortunate too, because this is a big hunk of real estate that this will take up. This is the controller, so I'm praying that I can control all of this via this controller via one piece of software. Let's not forget about our nice little piece of foam here that we got from the package, so I'm going to work on that. So slide that off. Ooh, that is a beautiful looking radiator. Alright, so I'm pretty sure these are already set up in the proper direction. I'm going to throw 2 screws in and then I'm going to position it. And then the wires are in the back. Yeah, that's perfect. This is going to be a piece of cake. maybe this is what it's for. I'm just going to use some zip ties to keep these wires on the fans together, essentially. Something that I want to point out that is an incredibly awesome tool to have are these flush cutters. They're basically like small little wire cutters. When you just place them against the head of a zip tie like that with a zip tie and you cut it, then the zip tie is cut completely flush. If you've ever been sliced by a diagonally cut zip tie, you're blindly digging through your PC and you just get sliced by a zip tie like that. And it looks nicer. A really nice tool to have. You can get them at Harbor Freight for probably like $5. Don't. I think we're ready to start kind of fitting this thing in. I'll use these little front panel pieces to prop it up briefly. All the washers these came with go with these small screws that'll go on top. I'm gonna go ahead and preload those. That way we can just get these wires started through their designated holes. Follow radiator. I forgot how tight of a squeeze this was, and the fact that we had to go in vertically. And now we have a much bigger distance. We're almost clear. Okay, so this is, with the fans on, this is an extremely tight fit. Having the wires through is definitely necessary. It makes it very difficult. I mean, it might be easiest just to remove this rear fan to install it. Actually, I could probably loosen it and slide it down here. Hold on. Ow. It all falls down, Jesus. We are getting some interference with this part of the bracket touching on this fan, which will probably prevent it from being lined up in the correct place. I'm going to mess around with it a little more. If not, we might have to modify the case a little bit. If we take a peek in here, you can see that there is a very small space between the fan shroud and the disk drive. If you look inside, it is in there and fits pretty well, I would say. You can see that it is bolted in, and I haven't done all of them, but as you can see, that hole lines up. Those holes are lining up pretty well, so that's pretty awesome. Alright, we managed to get every single hole on the whole radiator, and it all fits, so I'm very happy with that. I'm going to tighten it all down, and then we'll probably just move on to mounting the head. Tighten it up enough so that it's holding the radiator up, and I am really excited. I think it's going to be fantastic. Isopropyl alcohol down over here. Okay, 91%. I think that's all you need. Okay, get my little Q-tip wet. I don't think Q-tip's necessarily the best thing to use, if I'm being honest. This is an important part. Take your time. Make sure it's nice and clean. We want all new thermal paste for our sweet new cooler. Imagine you're the Toy Story repair guy and you're getting that glint back in his delicate little eye. Should be pretty cleaned off. Next, I'm going to do this. So, although they gave us a nice, good, solid coat, yeah, I definitely want to be careful because I am making little micro scratches in this, which is really not the end of the world, but looks like we're ready to install it. At least I am. I think that's pretty good. Contact. Give it a nice smush. Okay, I'm also crisscrossing these. I would say all of those are nice and snug. Cool. And now I'm going to do the M.2. I believe I found the correct screw. Oh, I'm dumb. The riser is already here, and this teeny tiny screw goes into it. Now that the riser's on there, now we can plug it in. And now we use the teeny tiny screw. Alright, I did struggle with that more than I would like to admit, but the SSD is in. According to the instructions, I'm going to be taking this main wire and doing the CPU fan, not pump fan. That's interesting, and then this goes to the back to the commander core, and then we just have that to figure out, which is going to be a pain in the butt. Definitely the least fun part, but potentially the most satisfying. Dealing with the issue of getting all my fans to work and all the RGB to work. I have Corsair fans and an RGB controller, but it's all working on kind of old stuff. So I'm going to redo all my fan wiring once again. System fan 1. Alright, fan splitter removed, I guess. It's pretty much together. We're at a point where I'm going to peel this off and fire it up. I'm basically going to make sure I have lights on everything and that the fans work and it boots up and is okay in that regard. And then I got to figure out how we're going to make this LED strip work, which will probably require some messing around. Let's just go ahead and... oh yeah. Last thing I'm going to do right here is just feed this zip tie up through here, propping up those hoses. That's a good idea of how close they are. Not making contact with anything metal, just being held by that zip tie. And we'll see if that holds. Okay, it should boot up. Pretty lights happening. Very beautiful looking. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, it's booted. So all RGB is turning on. That bottom RGB is not turning on. That's not good. Alright, as you can see, things are lit up. However, got a few problems. I mean, first of all, one of our fans is dead and doesn't want to light up. I don't know why that is. And this software is not my favorite. The computer seems to be working fine. At least it can boot up and stay idling, and the temps look fine. Long story short, I need 7 pins or little connectors for my RGB stuff, all of it, and only 6 are on the commander. I'm gonna kind of call it for now and get it to a point where I can at least use my computer for tonight, and then tomorrow I'll run to Micro Center, get the splitter, and then we'll just do all the finishing touches and make sure it's all really clean and organized, and yeah. Alright, so after a lot of effort, I managed to get all of the LED stuff figured out. It ended up being a software issue, so I have 6 fans. Well, actually I have 7 fans, 6 of which need to be controlled via the fan control and RGB. The bottom fan that I have, which is my 7th fan, I don't really care about pulse width modulation on that. RGB wise, I'm also kind of lucky because I already bought a Lighting Node Pro with my Corsair lighting kit. I figured that was the best way to do it so that I can control it via software. Prior to that, I had one of those dinky little LED strips that you could control with a remote, but my 6 fans that need 6 RGBs, they all went into the Commander Core Pro. That's very simple. It just needs one of those USBs and then a SATA power. I had to go in and manually find the fan and manually add that specific type of fan. So you run the wizard in the iCUE program, and it gives you options to auto-detect all of your fans. Then you can manually run the setup on that fan that should be there, and then do it manually, select your type of fan, and then hopefully that'll work. So for me, it was a software issue within iCUE. I had to manually set up and detect that fan rather than trying to automatically detect it. In regards to electrical stuff, there's series circuits and parallel circuits. I won't go into too much detail, but a series circuit basically means that if you take something out of that circuit, then the current can't flow through the entire circuit. And that is the case with these RGB fans, I believe. Someone mentioned that if you have them in the wrong slots, that can interrupt the series, and basically the rest of the LEDs following it can't get any power. I spent a lot of time messing around on the physical side, trying to make sure that everything was plugged in properly when it was a software issue. We clearly have quite the mess under here that we're gonna have to clean up. Should be fun. Can't wait. And so here's how it looks. So it's really not perfect. Definitely messy in this corner. And this is probably tighter against this than it's ever been. This is sloppy mainly because my SATA cables are a huge problem because they're flat cables and they're much longer than they need to be. I think it looks pretty good. And you know, nothing is going to be visible from the front. Alright, so pretty tied up down here. I think all the wires are pretty good. I think it's just time to start putting everything back together, all the paneling, and should be done. Alright, there it is in its finished glory. Wow, that was really quiet. Alright, so it's fired up and running. Everything seems to be pretty great. Everything runs nicely, no weird sounds of fan blades chopping up any wiring. With all the panels on and stuff and the way it's running right now, I feel like it's significantly quieter. My main CPU fan on the Hyper 212 Evo was loud. I used to get this weird, I want to say like timing chain rattle. It was a rattling sound when I started up my PC, and I have a feeling that was the Hyper 212. I'm not really sure why, but it was an ugly sound. The sound is gone. So far, so good. Alright, it's Clayton from the present. I did this install about a year ago, and I gotta say, upgrading to water cooling was probably one of the biggest performance boosts that I've seen in my PC. I haven't done a ton of huge upgrades. With my Hyper 212 Evo and my 9700, there would be times where my temperatures would reach 80 degrees Celsius. The highest temperatures I would see after the water cooler were roughly 60 degrees Celsius. So I would say on average there was like a 10 to 15 degree difference, and the computer just really overall felt much crisper. And for some reason it is a little quieter. I think those 3 fans muffled by a radiator just so happens to be a little quieter. This has been a wonderful upgrade, probably one of my favorite things I've done to my PC, and it really feels like I brought my PC to the next level, and I'm finally like using water cooling. It feels cool. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you around.